Alright, everyone, I won't bore you with the trials I had getting back to where we left off, or the little bit of sanity I lost going through ProfBrainFever's TikToks 3 times because the TikTok website is a fucking such a frustrating little bitch. So, I want to just insert real quick before we get started that if I'm slower to respond to some people right now, please have patience. I'm in the middle of doing some house project stuff. The end of summer is right around the corner. I'll be going back and all of that stuff. So I'm trying to finish some stuff up. And so I'm not by my computer and I'm not online as much right now. But without further ado, let's just continue on with our deep dive into Prof Brain Fever. Why? It loaded wrong! It froze! It froze and then it loaded wrong. I have to go all the way back. Why? Alright, I'll be back. Alright, so it took me like another 20 minutes to get back to this point, but we are here. We are here. We can actually start the fucking video. You guys, I've been... Alright. You know what? We're just gonna jump into it. We're just gonna go.
I feel like I keep saying this, but the phobia is about disgust of fat people, and it's about fear of becoming fat because of the disgust. Nobody uses the word fat phobia the way that you seem to think people are using it. I feel like I keep saying this, but the phobia...
So, I actually think I might have... I thought I had gotten to the end and this was a fresh one, but in the event that this one is not, I'm just going to cover it real quick. This, as far as I know, is about on par with the way I've seen fat phobia used. This kind of seems like a talking point when people talk about homophobia and how it more stems from a disgust of gay people rather than a fear of gay people. But sometimes it's fun to use it as like, oh, you're afraid of gay people as a way to like not harass, as a way to tease those that are bigoted. But even so, like the issue is that fat phobia isn't even used in terms of fear of being fat or disgust of fat people all the time. Like, again, I'm sorry, I'm always gonna harp on this because it pisses me off so much. But me posting before and after pictures is not me saying that I find fat people disgusting or that I'm afraid of being fat. It is a way to display the work that I've done on myself. If I want to be thinner, that's my goddamn business. It has nothing to do with what I think about fat people or my fear of being fat. It has to do with this is what I want for myself, and I went out and I got it. And it's just not... It's that sort of thing that's used in way of looking at something as fat phobic that pisses me off so much. And not everyone uses it, even the way that Prof Brain Fever is saying that people use it.
So this is the last time I'm going to make a video about the word fat phobia because it really doesn't matter.
I just want to apologize real quick because I think in the last one that we covered, I did not read the comment. I'm sorry. It was just saying that no one, is afraid of fat people. That's all it was really saying. But for this one, I am going to read the comment, and it's, for the simple fact that you are trying to prove yourself right over another person, that's what divides us on everything today, is there's no compromise. Which, I gotta be honest, I'm not even really seeing the point that they're trying to make here, but we'll just go ahead and listen to what Prof Brain Fever has to say.
When I say the word fat phobia, I mean hatred of fat people and discrimination against fat people. That's what I mean.
But that's a directly different definition than you provided just in the last TikTok. Hatred is different from disgust, although they are often interlinked, but they don't necessarily have to be. And discrimination isn't the same as a fear of being fat. And furthermore, here's the thing, is that a lot of the FA creators will say that I hate fat people. I don't hate fat people. I think you live your life, and for me, the issue comes when you try to say something that I'm doing for myself is hurting you. And that's where I get frustrated. That and the medical misinformation about what obesity actually does, that pisses me off. The argument that fat is entirely genetic, that pisses me off. It's those arguments that piss me off. It's not a hatred of fat people. And it's this ongoing thing of they're accusing you of hating a group when you are clearly just disagreeing with a ideological point that they're making. It's not the same thing. I can disagree with someone and not hate them. There are aspects of various religions that I don't like. I have serious issue with some of the ways that I've interacted with Christianity and Islam over my life. Does that mean I hate all Christians? No. Does that mean I hate all Muslims? No. I don't have a problem with the people, but there are certain ideological points that are made that I do have issue with. And that's not... I can have an issue with the ideology, the theology, the rhetoric that is spewed, and not necessarily attribute that to an issue I have with the people as a whole. This is what we call a nuanced take. This is what we call the ability to separate ideology from a person's value. But you guys keep trying to blend the two so that way people won't disagree with you.
You pretend that you don't understand that that's what I mean when I say fat phobia, you can get off my page, because that's what I mean. Thank you.
See, and that's another thing. You can just get off my page. The thing is, though, is that you have used it in a couple of different contexts now. Even your definition that you've given on 2 separate TikToks are different. And they're notably different. So, getting pissed off because people are getting confused about your definition. Now, don't get me wrong. This particular person might be just a bit obstinate, and I really dislike that. Did he say purposefully? I gotta check.
That's what I mean when I say fat phobia. If you pretend that you don't understand.
So that he used the term pretend to understand. If you pretend to not understand. And this is another issue that I have with the fat acceptance people. Fat Sapphic Bro accused me of this. Fat Feminist accused me of this. Of purposefully misunderstanding their points. Now, here's the thing. Plenty of people have made videos on these. I'm not the first one. And from what I've seen, generally people have the same takes as I do. More or less. In the same realm, at least. So, either everyone is just purposefully misunderstanding you, which I think is what they would assert, because it puts them in a victim role. But in reality, they're either not a good communicator or they can't stand by their own points. That's the thing. And don't get me wrong, and unfortunately they're too proud to admit, like, okay, no, that was taken to a little too far of a degree. You can still hold on to your idea, but realize that you went too far with it. I've done that a couple of times on this channel, especially in terms of fat people and doctors. I've had some conversations with people, and while I still have a certain connection to my original point, it's not as extreme as it was when I started this channel. That's called growth, and that's called the ability to understand when you took something too far. It doesn't show weakness. It doesn't show that it doesn't say that you were wrong. You don't have to say that you're wrong. You don't even have to deny your own central point. But if you take it to an extreme, it delegitimizes your point to a degree. It does. Because it just seems like you're taking things to the nth degree and no one's going to take you seriously. So you can reevaluate what you said and be like, okay, no, I made a mistake here, or that now that I think about it, or now that I reflect on it, or now that I see it again after some time has passed, I realize that that's not entirely what I meant, and that's taking it a little further than what I meant. That's totally fine. You can do that and not surrender the point entirely. But this is just an ongoing thing with the fat acceptance. This pretending to not understand, purposefully misunderstanding my points, it pisses me off because it's either saying that the person is dumb because they clearly don't understand, because they're getting it so wrong that they have to purposefully be misunderstanding what you're saying. It absolves you of maybe your bad communication skills. It makes it to where they don't clarify what they mean. Either he is clarifying a little bit here what he means, and that's great, but there have been others that just do not clarify what they mean then. And it's like, this is either a very transparent front that you're putting up, or you really don't even know what you're saying. You know?
I'm going to ignore.
So the comment says, it's natural to not want to be obese. The human body wasn't meant to carry 100 plus pounds of excess weight. I don't think that this is a wrong take here. I think this could be an open conversation of if we want to get into what's natural and what's not and what's best for the body and what's not. This wasn't disrespectful.
The pseudoscience in this comment to merely say, you can want whatever you want for yourself. I'm not going to judge you. Don't be a dick to fat people.
He's not being a dick, though. It's not natural to want to be obese. I agree with that. Here's the thing. We talk about what's natural and what desires are natural. Human beings are fucking weird. Humans are very much fucking weird. If you want to be obese, if you actively want to be obese, and I think this is what goes into the natural. Perhaps natural was not a great word to choose. But it's outside the norm and it's odd to want to be obese. Because to want to be obese and to pursue this, we've seen it with some of the fear community of people that actively pursue weight gain. But the thing is that through this continual attempt to gain weight, you're actively making yourself less mobile and more dependent. So there is that level too. And I agree that the human body wasn't meant to carry 100 plus excess pounds, or 100 plus pounds of excess weight. That's not unreasonable to say. That doesn't mean they're being a dick.
That's it. That's all I'm asking. Don't be a dick.
And what about this comment particularly was him being a dick? That's my question.
Can somebody just watch the movie and not look at anything political? I'm assuming you're using the term, or you're trying to use the term politically correct. When has that term been more of an oxymoron? Because when in our society has the use of fat jokes or fat suits or being insulting to fat people, when has that ever been politically incorrect to do? It is incredibly socially acceptable. And if it wasn't, we wouldn't.
No, you're actively changing, and it's not looking at anything political. I don't think that necessarily he meant correct unless that was added in a separate comment, but I didn't get the feeling that it was. But political, because the FA community has made weight and stuff a political discussion now to a degree. And I understand this isn't just, I think it is aimed at the FA community, ProfBrainFever in particular, but there is just this thing of sometimes, and I feel this even sometimes, if I'm enjoying a piece of media, I don't want to see a bunch of discourse for everything that I watch on whether something was, appropriate, whether something, like, who was the director, what was their background, are they a bigot in some form or fashion, or what is the underlying message of this? Sometimes I just want to enjoy the entertainment at face value for what it's worth, and as someone who kind of understands what this person is saying and not getting swept up in it, this is a situation where clearly ProfBrainFever is not for you, and just kind of scroll on in that case, because this is him. I don't know, this is one of those things where it's like, I've seen plenty of, there's this whole section of the Danny Phantom fandom that claimed that Danny was, like, the whole ghost thing was a metaphor for being trans. And that there's some compelling arguments made for it. It just was never something that I saw in it as someone who grew up with it, and it doesn't resonate with me. But I don't say that, you're clearly wrong, you don't know what you're talking about or anything like that. I just am like, I'm just going to pass that by and not engage with it, because it's not something that I agree with and not something that resonates with me. Granted, you can have a conversation. I think just saying, don't make it political is the same as saying, kind of don't share your opinion on it. This is something where it's like, it's clearly not for you. So this is one situation where I'd be like, maybe you should just move on if you don't want any of this extraneous reading into the media you enjoy. Just put as his TikTok account as not interested, Because there are people that gain a lot that love looking at this sort of thing in media. For me, it frustrates the fuck out of me a lot of the time. I'm like, can't we just enjoy things sometimes? There's just some stuff where it's like, I can acknowledge the issues with the author. I can, for example, Harry Potter. We all know that J.K. Rowling's a TERF. We know. I think that the whole shit that she kept trying to put forth of, I never said Hermione wasn't black, and Dumbledore was actually gay, and this whole pushing through that she does, like, girl, no, you weren't thinking that when you made it. You're just looking to keep Harry Potter socially conscious or something, whatever you want to call it, in whatever realm that you're okay with. And for me, I'm like, Harry Potter was a product of a different time. We didn't have these kinds of discussions a whole lot, and that doesn't mean that the series isn't good. And unfortunately, I get a lot of people telling me to not promote this to my students because J.K. Rowling's a TERF. And the truth is that kids love Harry Potter. They want to be able to read Harry Potter like the older kids, and it's a motivation for them to read. So no, I'm going to continue giving them the Harry Potter books and promoting the Harry Potter books because it is still something that they love. And I don't think that kids should be held responsible or kids should be denied a piece of good media that doesn't have any real political implications behind it because there's some issues with the author. So there's a whole conversation that can be had around stuff like this. And if you don't want to engage with it, you don't have to. I just don't think that saying, let's not make this into... That's all ProfBrainFever does. That's all he does, is make things into this kind of social justice argument, particularly FA argument. So this is one of the situations where it's like, dude, just scroll on. Just don't engage.
Have movies like Darren Aronofsky's The Whale, starring the incredible and who I love, Brendan Fraser, in a movie that I will not see unless I have to watch it for a critical reason for a podcast, because they put him in a giant fat suit. And even without the fat suit, the movie is horribly problematic. So you turn off your brain if you want to. I don't have that luxury.
Oh, that's so I am very smart fucking comment. That irritated the shit out of me just a little bit. But someone on the comment says, you always go off on a tangent. The commenter asked for a perspective on the movie without social commentary. Chris responds, the answer is no, at least not from me, search elsewhere. And I think that this is kind of a valid response. This one in particular is a valid response from him. He's not required to give a non-political commentary, a non-social commentary on a movie if that's not what he wants to do. If he wants to connect them and that's fun for him, it's his TikTok. He can post what he wants. This is one thing where it's like, I may not agree with his points, but he's allowed to say whatever the fuck he wants. And I don't think that he has to cater to randos that happen upon his page and don't necessarily want the social commentary.
Hey, non-fat people, have you ever considered what it would be like traveling in an airplane as a fat person? If you haven't, think about it now. Do you think fat people like traveling by air? Do you think we like cramming ourselves into these tiny seats that many non-fat people find constraining and hard to fit into? Do you think we enjoy asking someone for the seatbelt extender because...
Then don't fucking fly. I'm sorry. Do you think we enjoy this? Do you think we enjoy... I don't give a fuck whether you enjoy it. This is the reality that we fucking live in. Like, this whole thing of feel sorry for me because I'm fat and I have to deal with these embarrassing consequences of my life choices. It's just, this irritates the shit out of me. Like, no. No. Do you think fat people like flying? Who likes flying? Granted, I've never been on a plane before. Like, I'm a homebody. I don't really care for traveling that much. Like, I like it in theory, but the logistics of it, I don't care for. Not to mention the fact that I just can't afford it. But even if I could, from the general things that I've heard from people, flying sucks for virtually everybody, unless you're, a billionaire with a private jet or something like that. But generally, mass consumer transportation in the form of flying sucks for everybody. So yes, you have to ask for a seatbelt extender. That's because you overeat. Like, don't fucking put that on me. Like, somehow, I should feel sorry for you because you have to ask for a seat. Like, this is. I'm sorry you're embarrassed, but that's not my fault nor my responsibility.
It's not long enough to go around us. Do you think we like having the arms of the seats dig into our sides for hour-long flights?
Okay, but do you think that the person sitting next to you likes having your fat spill into their space at the same time? Like, you think about us, think about have consideration for us, blah 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 blah, and yet you're not having consideration for the people that will sit next to you.
As uncomfortable as you, a non-fat person, might feel sitting on an airplane, and as uncomfortable as you, as a non-fat person, sitting on an airplane next to a fat person might feel, I'd like you to try to extend your empathy and consider what it must be like for the actual fat person flying because they have to, because we all occasionally have to fly. Now, the person who left this comment doesn't have empathy, at least.
So the comment says, y'all love taking up space on planes and making everyone else uncomfortable just because you can't take care of yourselves. Okay, but I mean they do have a little bit of a point of, like, as much as uncomfortable you might be sitting next to a fat person, I feel like what he's getting at is that, oh, I don't want to sit next to a fat person. That's not the issue. The issue is that the fat person has excess weight that is spilling out of their seat into someone else's personal space. And you can talk about extending empathy all you want. The truth is, though, is that if a person regularly has to fly or continually has to fly, and this is a regular issue, perhaps they could make efforts to either buy two seats, so that way they're not in someone else's space. And yeah, the armrest going up and down might be an issue there. I get that. But I'm sure there's a way around it. There's usually a way around this sort of thing. And it's just like, I don't know. I think that you're asking for a lot of empathy from other people without considering the effect that you are having on other people's experience. Like, I don't know. This just seems very self-centered to me.
Not for fat people, but I would encourage you to stop and consider when you get on an airplane and you see a fat person, instead of getting mad at the fat person for taking up so much room on the plane, maybe get angry at the people who designed the plane that way.
No, I'm sorry. No. If the fat person sitting there is more than the weight of two average-sized humans, then some of the responsibility has to fall on the fat person. I'm sorry, but it does. This is something, like, I'm not saying that they should feel ashamed for the entire length of the flight or anything like that. I'm not saying that they should be bullied. I'm not saying they should be harassed. I'm not saying that they should be cursed out on the plane or anything. But they have to take responsibility for at least some of their embarrassment and some of the stares that they get because they didn't buy two seats. To at least, I think if the fat person buys two seats and they're able to stay within those two seats, then people can shut the fuck up and just they did their responsibility to not impede on someone else's space. But otherwise, if I have to sit next to, if like the fat person is in the middle seat, or not even in the middle seat, let's say they're in the aisle seat and I'm in the middle seat, and their fat is spilling into my space on an already, like, not very roomy seat or anything, no, I think I have the right to be a little annoyed at that. I do.
So I've had multiple people come up with
So the comment says, I guess at least he already lives in a fat body. I hate fat suits, but I love Brendan.
Some version of this argument. Brendan Fraser is fat. He's one of us. So it's not that bad, right? And I can see where you're coming from. And I want to be clear. I wish nothing but the best for Brendan Fraser. I think he's a phenomenal talent. By all accounts, he seems to be a wonderful person. And I wish nothing but success and happiness for him. But when you look at a movie, particularly a movie that features a fat suit, you have to look at more than just the fat suit. Because some films that include a fat suit, if you removed it, you would solve the fat phobia problem. At least the overt one. If we cut the fat suit from Avengers Endgame, for example, they would not have any fat jokes because they couldn't, because he wouldn't be fat. And that would solve the direct problem of the fat jokes and the fat phobia and hating on fat people. We would get rid of that. With this movie, and I know it hasn't come out yet, but it's based on a play. It's based on a play that is deeply fatphobic, is deeply problematic, written by a thin person, and the adaptation is being directed by a thin person. So even if we were to go in, like I have any power, but even if one were to go in and remove the fat suit from the equation and just have Brendan Fraser play it as Brendan Fraser without prosthetics, it would still be a problematic production. It would still be a problematic story. When a story centers fatness, or even features fatness prominently, and has something to say about fatness, ask yourself who is telling this story. In this case, it's a bunch of thin people, and Brendan Fraser is taking an acting job. And by all accounts, his performance is fantastic, and I wish the best for him. I will probably not see the film. If I do see the film, I will be analyzing it for my upcoming podcast, My Fat Ass. But until then, I have no intention of seeing it or adding money to the coffers of people who would make that film. But again, this is not about Brendan Fraser. This is not about just the fat suit, as bad as the fat suit is. This is about the film as a whole. And the film as a whole is anti-fat and fatphobic. And I know that because I read the play.
All right. So, full disclaimer, I've never watched The Whale and I haven't read the play. So, I'm just going to kind of pass off to you guys. What do you think? Do you think The Whale was egregiously fatphobic? If you saw it, if you've read the play, is it really terrible? Like, I'm just, in your perspective, how bad is the narrative of The Whale in terms of portraying fat people? If you've seen it, if you've read it, let me know.
Controversial hot take. If the movie you're making requires the use of a fat suit, it's gonna be a shitty movie.
So the comment that he's responding to says, okay, but Brendan Fraser is kind of fat IRL, not 600 pounds, but there are no actors who are. So this whole idea, and this is, again, like, such a ham-fisted opinion of if it has a fat suit prosthetic at all, then it's a shitty movie. Again, to take this in a different realm for, like, sexism, Stranger in a Strange Land had a lot of sexist overtones to it. The women were not represented well. A lot of them were treated as objects. Like most, if not all of them, were treated as objects in some form or fashion. It was not a good book in terms of the sexism that it presented, but it was still an interesting narrative and a good story. Just because something features something that you don't like doesn't mean that you throw out the baby with the bathwater. Doesn't mean that the entire thing is chucked and therefore shitty. I think that I hate this sort of take that because it has one thing that I don't like in it, that therefore the entire thing is shit. I hate that mindset. I hate that type of opinion. Things can have problems with them and you can still love them. I don't love Stranger in a Strange Land, but I still think that it was a good book. But my point still stands.
No such.
The comment says no such thing as fat phobic, just lose weight, except if you can't because medical reasons.
Thing is fat phobic, just lose weight. If there's no such thing as being fat phobic, Salty, why do you care if I lose weight? Why do you care? No.
I think that they're saying just lose weight because you keep saying that there's like this whole, you perceive, a lot of the FAs perceive discrimination even when there isn't one. Like not so much ProfBrainFever from anything that they've said, from anything that he's said, but Fat Feb Feminist would talk about people just so much as glancing at her and then create this whole narrative of what was going on in their minds. For that, it's like, then lose the weight so you aren't that paranoid about it. Because that person did nothing wrong. There, and she even stood by that comment in my comments when people were talking to her about it. And the thing is that it's like, you don't understand, you are attributing a thought crime to somebody, and that's what the issue is. And she's like, well, I've been fat my whole life and I know what a look is. You don't, though, because people can have a look on their face and you can interpret it as one thing when in reality they were thinking something else. I have this issue with people that often think that I'm pissed off when in reality I'm fucking panicking. It's a matter of how we express our emotions and how they're read by other people. So this, if there's no such thing as fat phobia, then why should I lose weight? Because you are paranoid clearly about what other people think.
Complain.
The comment reads, but complaining about stuff like this and complaining about having to buy 2 tickets is totally your own fault, coming from a person who lost a lot of, and I'm guessing that's weight. And I think that, yeah, complaining that you have to buy 2 tickets on an airline when you would otherwise be spilling into other people's space, yes, then you have a choice to make. Buy the 2 plane seats and shut up, or lose weight. That's not fat phobia. I would agree with that.
About having to buy 2 plane tickets is totally your own fault. What have the airline CEOs got on you, is my question. What have they done that have you so enthralled?
I'll have a very small announcement at the end of this, but this is what we call a misdirection, like a redirection of the actual point. ProfBrainFever isn't addressing the comment. He is attacking the commenter and saying, what have the airlines got on you? Basically saying that the commenter is basically a puppet for the airlines. Now, he's probably being a bit facetious there, but that's it seems to be his overall talking point here. Rather than addressing whether fat people having to buy 2 plane tickets is fair or not in his own perspective there, rather than responding to that point, he's creating a whole new narrative and attacking the person behind the argument, not the argument itself.
That you view their systematically shrinking of airline seats so that they can make more and more and more profits is the fault of fat people. How do we get there? Hey, thin people, I just wanted to let you know, if you're really, really concerned about sitting next to a fat person on an airplane, you can always buy yourself an extra seat.
And again, we are not, like, see this, you act as though you don't understand the point at all. Why should, the person doesn't know if they're going to be sitting next to a fat person or not. The fat person already knows that they're fat. Do you not see the difference there? Why should I buy 2 seats for every flight that I go on that I may not even need? Where the person who's morbidly obese, or at least obese enough that they are spilling out of the seat and into other seats, always knows that that is what's going to happen. This is such a shit argument. I'm sorry, but it is.
Do you want to know how insidious internalized fat phobia is? My 7-year-old will never be fat. That's not a goal or a choice or a wish. That's just a biological fact. My kid has cystic fibrosis. It's a genetic disorder, and among other things, it prevents your pancreas from producing the enzymes that allow you to properly absorb the nutrients from the food you eat. Thanks to modern medicine and daily medication, my kid's doing fine, but he's a beanpole. No matter how much he eats, the CF will never let him be fat. And there's a tiny, shitty, mean little voice in the back of my head that says, yay, he'll never be fat like his dad. That voice is internalized fat phobia, and it's full of shit. Because I'd much rather my kid be fat than have a potentially life-threatening condition. Do you want
I find that for me, I'm like, you're like, that's internalized fat phobia. That's very much a you issue. I mean, you can say that it's because of internalized fat phobia, but for someone who plenty of FAs would call me fat phobic, it wouldn't necessarily dawn on me to think with my kid with cystic fibrosis. Now, granted, I don't have kids, so I haven't been in this particular circumstance to think this, but it wouldn't necessarily dawn on me to think in that way. That seems more like a you issue. And even if it did, I would qualify this as more like trying to find some positive into an inherently negative situation. Your kid is sick. They have this issue that they require medication for, and that they will require medication for the rest of their life. Part of me would think, well, it's like, well, at least he'll never have a weight issue. At least he'll, like, to try to find some benefit to the situation. I don't know if that's a truly internalized fat phobia, or if that is the natural inclination, especially for you as a parent, to try to find some benefit to the situation, so that way to help with what I would assume is a sense of internalized guilt, as many parents have. At least from what I've seen, many parents have when their kid is sick and they think, well, if I had just done something else, or at least it's this, as a way to kind of cope with the anxiety and the stress that causes when you have a sick kid. To me, that's what that comes from, but that's just my perspective.
the seats are
The comment says the seats are smaller to make the prices lower. Flying was once a luxury and is now routine. Small seats allow more people buy two seats.
smaller to make the prices lower? No, the seats are smaller so they can cram more onto the airplanes so that the CEOs of the airlines can make more money. It's capitalism, and fuck that.
I mean, to a certain extent, I think both are true. I think both points are true. The point is, though, is that if the average person can fit in an airline seat without issue, then it does fall on you as an individual who is clearly outside the norm to adjust for the average situation. It for people with disabilities, it can really suck. For someone who is fat and otherwise able-bodied, I just don't have sympathy. Sorry, not sorry, but I don't have sympathy.
Why is the Pledge of Allegiance even a thing? So my 8-year-old started second grade, and we've moved to a new town, and so he's in a new school district, and they do the Pledge of Allegiance. Only he doesn't. Which is not to say that he's protesting or anything. He stands up with the class, he moves his lips, but he doesn't even know what the Pledge of Allegiance is. I assume they just think that that second graders at this point would know it, but he doesn't. And then today he told me that his teacher said that when he asks the kids to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance, if he doesn't hear enough voices saying it, he'll ask them to do it again. Which is a little weird, right? I'm not looking to start trouble. I'm not looking to, have my kid start objecting loudly to the Pledge of Allegiance being said in schools all across the country. But I did make it clear to him that I am fine with whatever action he wants to take. Because also, on top of everything else, we're a non-religious family. I'm an atheist. His mom's an atheist. The kids don't have religion. They know about religion, but especially with the bit about under God, that seems weird. And to my 8-year-old, that seems weird, and he doesn't want to do it. So parents of TikTok, have any of you had to deal with this? Have you taken any steps? All I've told him is that I told him I support him regardless of what he does. If he doesn't want to stand, he doesn't have to. If he wants to, because he doesn't want to sort of separate himself from the class and make himself a point of attention, I 100% get that. I've also told him that if the teacher comes to him and tells him that he has to say it, that no, he doesn't. That he can tell the teacher that his dad says that he can't, or not that he can't, that his dad says that he does not have to say the pledge because legally he doesn't have to, but also dad says he doesn't have to. And if the teacher has any issues with that, they can contact me. But otherwise, other than it being kind of weird and a little awkward, I think things are okay. He's just going to keep standing and
Alright, I think I don't need to hear what's left. But I wanted to talk about this because I actually have pretty strong feelings about the Pledge of Allegiance. For anyone who didn't know, the Pledge of Allegiance was originally a flag ad in the back of a Boy Scouts newsletter or magazine or something like that from the mid 1800s, mid to late 1800s. It was written by, I don't remember his name, but he was a Christian socialist that originally wrote the Pledge of Allegiance. It was also originally, the salute was not putting your hand over your heart. It was something that we would equate with Nazis today, was that kind of salute. And all that aside, I think my biggest issue with the Pledge of Allegiance was that it was originally an ad. It was like probably one of the most successful ad campaigns in American history that few people know about. But it was adopted as something to say in classrooms because people liked it so much, and it felt like it was a good, representation of American patriotism. For me personally, I struggle with the Pledge of Allegiance on a couple of different fronts. One, I don't like having the kids pledge allegiance because they don't really understand what that means. I don't like having kids go through this whole mantra for something that they don't really understand, number one. Number two, I really don't like the idea of reciting a over 100-year-old ad as a sign of patriotism. I don't really like that either. Three, the kids come from a wide variety of backgrounds. We have a number of refugees in my school district and even in my school, and like we'll go with Ukraine, and those kids loved their country. They came because of war. They didn't have any say in where they went. They didn't have any choice in where they went to. And they are struggling with the difference of languages and the differences of culture. And so having to put their hand over their heart and recite the Pledge of Allegiance is difficult for them. And I don't think that we should necessarily make them do that. There's a number of issues I personally have with the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, if kids want to say it, I don't have a problem with them saying it. I just don't like it being a requirement. The librarian that I work with actually has all the kids not only stop, but then take off their hoods and hats as a sign of respect, and will physically walk over and tug hoods and hats off the kids' heads while we're saying it. And I don't like it. Do I do anything about it? The truth is no, because it's not really my place. I'm not in a position of power in my school. I'm not in a place where I can exercise that authority. Once I have my own classroom, we will say the Pledge of Allegiance every day simply because that is school policy. But in my classroom, it's optional. If you want to, I will say it with you. But if you don't want to, you can stay seated. You can do something. All I ask is that, we still be respectful to those that it means something to. So, also, I just want to say, since you said that you're an atheist and your kids are aware of religion but don't know everything about that, as someone who was raised in a pagan household, and I mean pagan, we had cauldrons, we had smudge sticks all over the place, crystals. I was reading a lot of astrology books between the ages of about 8 and 14. I had pagan coloring books, which more than one had at least one picture of naked women dancing under the full moonlight. It wasn't anything big to me, and they weren't detailed. It's not like it was anatomically correct, but that was my experience growing up. And the disconnect from especially in the U.S. as a predominantly Christian society, in that a lot of the practices that we do, a lot of the celebrations that we have and stuff, have some Christian root to it. It would be beneficial for your kids to, they don't have to believe anything, but teaching them some basic concepts of Christianity will help them in spaces like this. Just kind of having a little bit of an understanding of, and not just Christianity, it wouldn't hurt for them to know the basics of Islam and any religion that's kind of represented in their school, but especially Christian and Judaism. I would even say, if we want to go through those three branches of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, it wouldn't hurt for them to have kind of a general basis, especially since they share gods depending on that's kind of a big mess, and I'm not going to get into it, but having some basic understanding of the belief system of probably the majority of people around, even if people don't go to church every week or anything, they will still identify as Christian, and there's certain things that I just think would be beneficial for the kids to know. It definitely would have helped me. Especially once I was in, granted I was homeschooled, but once I was in more traditional learning spaces, there was some very specifically regarding understanding general ideas of Christianity and Judaism and that sort of thing. Like it was subtle, but it created enough of a disconnect in the understanding of where other people were coming from and what other people meant and what other people thought, that it created some arguments that did not need to happen had I just had a basic background understanding of this. So I say that not because Christianity is good and everyone should know it. That's not what I'm saying. But because so many people are Christian and a lot of Christians are very vocal, it doesn't hurt for the kids to have like a basic background understanding of it. I'm just saying, just someone who was raised pagan, who had similar understandings at the age of your kids. When I was that age, there are things that will be better for your kids if they just have a general understanding. They don't need to believe anything. You don't need to preach it as truth. You just need to teach them this is what a lot of people believe in this country. Just a general basics, so that way they're not completely lost in certain conversations.
This is a joke, right?
So the caption says, people keep saying that the movie with a fat suit and fat public plot is going to win all of the Oscars. He got really caught up on The Whale, I swear. Dude, you need to not take so much offense from a movie.
This might be a hot take, but if you compare being fat to having a drug addiction.
So the comment says, have you seen his film Requiem for a Dream? Were you outraged that they didn't use real drug addicts to play the part?
I don't think you're a good person, and I'm probably going to block you.
Once again, we get into a morality argument rather than responding to the point here. And here's the thing. I actually think that if you get to the point of being morbidly obese, the connection of drug addiction isn't too far off, because I would say you would probably have a food addiction. There is, like, there... If you get to the point where you are morbidly obese, then chances are you are using... I don't think people get to the point of morbid obesity without there being some issue around food. I don't think that most people do it simply because they are a glutton. I think there is probably a chemical feedback loop, like a biochemical feedback loop of, I'm deriving the happy brain chemicals from eating, and so I keep eating even past the point of fullness and stuff just to get that dopamine release, which isn't unlike those that take drugs for a similar effect. Also, people will sometimes eat to, cope with negative emotions, much like some drug addicts will use drugs to cope with negative emotions. Like, there are parallels there. And to turn this into about, being a good person or a bad person is to not... it just shows how closed off your viewpoint is. So, this was muted, but the comment says, at least they cast a heavier actor this time to begin with. Doesn't make it right, but 1 centimeter in the right direction. And then the captions for him say, how is the best case scenario? Fat actors in fat suits? Because a lot of people pointed out that, like, morbid obese people probably wouldn't be able to handle the grueling 12 to 18 hour days that come with acting in a movie, and there's a lot of we've seen it even in, like, My 600 Pound Life. A lot of people that are morbidly obese can't even handle several hour car rides where they're doing nothing but sitting down. So how would they be able to handle everything that goes in with movie making at that weight? And I kind of agree with that. So the fat suit was what came in there. And I think the issue comes down to his hardline opinion about fat suits. Like, no matter what, they are always bad, they are always wrong, they are always fatphobic. And that's where this issue is because there is no potential for him to see the other side because he is so hardline on this point.
Doesn't this get tiring? Oh, my friend.
So that's not the entire comment. It says, doesn't this get tiring, Lamau? Like, always having something to complain about. Not every... I think that's meant to be not every. Not every movie is going to cater to your sensibilities. I actually 100% agree with this. There are just going to be movies that don't resonate with you or that you might have an inherent issue with. I don't watch a lot of movies, so that hasn't happened to me. But there are just times when you kind of have to accept a movie for what it is. And I have to say, for as much outrage as he has over this, my question would be, doesn't it get tiring to be so pissed off at a piece of media? You know?
And I know you didn't mean it this way, but yes, in fact, it is exhausting that so much of media is just suffused with fat phobia. I would be so happy to be bored watching films and TV and not having to see all of the shitty fat jokes and all of the fat suits and the way all media horribly treats fat people. I would love that. Unfortunately, it exists. It's pretty much everywhere, and it is exhausting. But I'm going to keep bringing it up, because if I don't bring it up, it's never going to change.
In all honesty, though, you bringing it up isn't necessarily going to change it either. Let's be pretty honest, and this is going to be my jaded take of the video. Nothing changes unless it makes someone money. That's been my general understanding of how things work, is unless someone stands to make some money from it, or someone that has substantial money cares about it, or at the very least some power cares about it, nothing's gonna get done. And at best, social influence will gain a token gesture, kind of like that whole New York policy bill thing that was passed that we talked about in the Fat Fab Feminist videos. You talking about it doesn't really do anything. So if someone has a lot of money and gives a shit, then maybe something will happen. But typically, it has to make someone money for anything to change.
Who's a celebrity or an artist that you have conflicted feelings over? For me, it's Weird Al Yankovic. On the one hand, he's Weird Al. His music is awesome. On the other hand, he came out with the song Fat while I was in elementary school. I did not have a good time in elementary school. Who's a celebrity?
It kind of feels like he's blaming Weird Al for his childhood trauma. A little bit. Am I wrong? I like the Fat song, but I also like Bad. So I think that's part of the reason why I like it. I don't really listen to Weird Al so much anymore. I used to really have like a full playlist of his songs and stuff, and I go through phases, and it's just not a phase that I'm in right now to listen to him. But that song was catchy. You gotta learn to let shit go, dude. You gotta learn to not make everything into this reflection of childhood trauma and how you're oppressed and stuff. And I think that's an issue with a lot of social justice movements, actually, and I'm not going to name anyone in particular, but I think that there's often this oversensitivity to the point where minute things are being called out as whatever phobic because someone is almost looking to be offended. I do think that it's not like 100% of the time. I'm not saying that every gripe that everyone has with every piece of media is because they're just looking to be offended or because they're oversensitive. I'm not saying that, but there is a level of, it feels like you're looking to be offended with some things, you know?
Hi, do you know what a...
So the comment says, well, physically fit people can play more characters and are more durable for stunts and actions or even just long, arduous shoots.
stereotype is, because you're perpetuating one right now.
But they're not wrong. Fat people typically get winded and exhausted more easily. And if you disagree with that, then let's find the fittest, morbidly obese person that is nominated based purely from the fat acceptance movement. Nominate your fittest fat person, and then we will take the fittest thin person that we can see, put them side by side. I guarantee the fit thin person will outlast the fit fat person. And that is before we even get into the super morbidly obese, my 600-pound lifestyle sort of bodies that you are advocating for in the issue of the whale. Like, let's just, dude, come on. Acknowledge reality at least a little bit. On occasion. Come on, my guy. Like, come on, man.
So am I looking too hard when I'm...
So the comment says, serious, are you looking too hard? I mean, in the way that sometimes we hyper-focus. I'm fat and I don't quite see it the way you do.
finding fat phobia in media? I think, honestly, I do think that that's a valid question. I mean, part of it is I'm looking because this is the niche I found on TikTok. This is the content that I am making. So I need to look. But beyond that, I do find that it was easy once upon a time to shut my brain off and not see it. I remember the first time I read those teenage wizard books by the transphobe, anti-Semitic racist. The first time I read those as a kid.
Wait, is J.K. Rowling anti-Semitic too? I didn't know that. And I find it interesting that he's like severely censoring himself in terms of naming Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling. But let's listen to what the rest of what he has to say.
I didn't notice the blatant fat phobia that is just rampant in that book series. I just didn't see it because it's everywhere. Sadly it's everywhere in media, and so my brain didn't process it for what it was. And then going back, I see it, and there's so many other issues with that particular book series. But now that I've sort of trained myself to look for fat phobia, for bad fat rep, I see it, and I can't unsee it because I've taken the blinders off, as it were. Sometimes I wish I could go back and just enjoy stuff. And I want to be clear that just because I find fat phobia or bad fat rep or non-existent fat rep in media doesn't mean that I necessarily don't enjoy or don't like that piece of media. I can watch things that have no fat rep or even bad fat rep and still enjoy them for what they are. I like the Marvel movies, with one exception, pretty much one exception being Ned from the Spider-Man films. The Marvel movies are horrible at fat rep, but I still enjoy the films. I can still sit down and watch them with varying degrees of enjoyment. So yeah, it is because I'm not looking too hard for fat phobia because it's really not that hard to find. But I am looking now, and I can't just turn my brain off anymore. If you can, I kind of envy you just a little bit. But then if I did that, I wouldn't have anything to post TikToks about.
So that's the primary reason then, that yes, you do look for it because you want content, which is fine. Like, dude, I actively engage with shit that I don't like too in the name of content. Like, that's fine, but it feels like ProfBrainFever spins this into this pseudo intellectual sort of thing, like if you can turn your brain off, I envy you sort of thing. But it's like you've trained your brain to look for it because you want content, because you're constantly thinking. Like, I totally get that, because that happens to me too. Sometimes when I'm listening, I'm like, oh, that's a fat acceptance. That sounds like a fat acceptance talking point. And sometimes I'll like go into this and like, oh, do they say anything else? Do they say, when I'm listening to something completely unrelated to fat acceptance? And most of the time it's a one-off comment that it's like, okay, so that's, just leave it alone. Like, it's, let's be honest, you're looking at it for content, and I understand that perspective. I do. But looking at something for content because you make regular content is not the same as it being connected to your personal beliefs. It's not the same thing as being sensitive to it for its own sake. There's a mechanism in there because you are using it for some sort of capital, be that social capital or whether you make money on it. Like, let's be perfectly honest and upfront with that. So I thought that was an interesting admission, and I appreciate the honesty there. Oh, I was hoping to get through another month. I was not I was really, like, Prof Brainfever is going to end up taking me a long time to get through. Because he has so much, and I even skipped a couple. Like, fat acceptance talking points and videos and stuff. I'm at the point where I'm starting to think that I might start skipping some of the whale commentary that he has, only because it feels like he's starting to repeat himself more, and it's kind of getting tiring with the same talking points over and over and over again. I'm kind of getting tired of the fat suit commentary. I think I'm going to look at one more, and then I'm going to call it a video. Unfortunately, we didn't get through another full month or anything yet. But I'm thinking I might start skipping some of his commentary on fat suits and the whale, simply because I feel like the topic has been adequately explored at this point.
I finished watching through The Sandman with my wife, and I really enjoyed it, but I'm bothered the tiniest bit that the only two really fat characters are the physical embodiment of the concept of despair and a serial killer.
And once again, feels like an overanalyzation of a piece of media. This is what happens when you get a little too involved with your ideology. It's okay to just let some things go and not make a comment on it. But I understand you need content. You need content for your TikTok. Because we enjoy, like, let's be perfectly honest here. I love seeing the comments that I get, the likes on my videos, seeing new people subscribe to my channel, all that shit. I love it. I love talking with you guys in the comments. I like reading other people's perspectives. There is that aspect of it, but then there's also just the validation aspect from all of those things that we enjoy. Let's be honest with it, you know? So, I need to leave it here, because this video is the recording time is getting too long, and it took me so long to just get the video started. Like, it took me an hour to get it ready the first time, and then another 45 minutes when things went fucking pear-shaped at the beginning of the video. So, at this point, it's been like 3 hours that I've devoted to this fucking video. So, I need to leave it here. Something that I want to make note about the video that I mentioned earlier on in this video is that I was waiting to announce this for the 3,000 subscribers special. I honestly thought I would get to that by September, but I've been cycling through the same 5 subscribers of, like, getting all the way up at 5 new subscribers, but then like 5 people unfollowing or unsubscribing, and it's just been fluctuating there. And I'm excited about this project, and I want to announce it. It probably will not be you won't see the first videos on it until December, because I have a whole thing planned for December of different video ideas going on, and a lot of it isn't fat acceptance related. It's just me throwing ideas out there just as a sampling for December. That's what's gonna hopefully happen. That is what my plan is. I'm recording an extra video here, an extra video there, and just tucking it to the side for December. One of the things that I want to do is a 3 series that are interconnected. I mentioned this to Andrew Colton in the last video, because he had a fantastic response in there that I felt was a really good representation for something that I wanted to cover. So what we're going to go through is Graham's hierarchy of debate, that the lowest part of the hierarchy is just name calling, and then the highest part of the hierarchy is refutation of the central point. And then something that Prof Brainfever did here that I also want to cover is a series on logical fallacies and then cognitive biases. Now, this is not the same as internalized biases. This is cognitive biases, and I want to have this whole series where a series of series where I explain one aspect of it. I give some examples myself, and then I'm going to create like a separate email address for you guys to like send me links and stuff for what you saw in the wild in your viewing, and then create like a compilation of those for another video. So, like for Graham's hierarchy of debate, we have name calling, and then we have ad hominem attacks, and then we have I forgot what the the exact term is of it, but it's just like saying, no, it's not. No, it's like that sort of thing. And I wanted to give examples of that both primarily in fat acceptance and anti-fat acceptance talking points, but also in other areas like flat earthers and that sort of thing. And that's something that I want to put together. So we're going to have that, as well as a couple of different ideas that I've had that don't generally fit in very well with the content that I'm doing here, and I wasn't sure how well they would be received. So I'm doing kind of like a little sampler. I'm planning a sampler in the month of December. So that's what I'm doing now. Reminder, I am in the middle of working on some house projects, so I'm not responding as frequently right now to comments. I will be getting through them eventually, though. Just please have patience with me. I'm praying to God this video comes through the way it's supposed to and works out fine. But without any more, I really got to get going. So I'm going to have to end it here. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.